Yeah, let's bring in political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. Also with us, member of the New York Times editorial board, Mara Gay, and Reverend Al Sharpton is still with us as well.
So, Greg, quite an ad, letting Herschel Walker's words, try to speak for themselves. We just sort of go around in circles. But man, the images this weekend from Georgia, those lines were crazy. It looks like a lot of people very interested in this special election. What can you tell us?
Well, there was a turnout surge. Senator Warnock had about half a dozen events all over Metro Atlanta this weekend, rallying voters to the polls, and the turnout was huge. About 156,000 voters cast ballots this weekend, mostly in Metro Atlanta and other Democratic-leaning areas, so Democrats are very confident. Meanwhile, Herschel Walker didn't have any public events. And that's why Democrats are confident now they're banking votes to give them a cushion ahead of December 6th runoff.
So have you talked to Republican leaders? Have you talked to Republican politicians in the state? Is there any evidence? And again, this isn't like a leading question for the MSNBC crowd. I'm just genuinely curious. Are Republicans concerned about a lack of interest on their side while you have Democrats obviously very excited about what happened a month ago, thinking, hey, we can get a 51st senator?
Without a doubt. The moment that Democrats clinched control of the U.S. Senate, it took away one of Herschel Walker's biggest arguments, which was, to those skeptical Republican voters, a vote for Herschel Walker was still a vote for a check on President Biden, was still a vote for a Republican-controlled Senate. They no longer have that argument, and so now it's that much harder for Herschel Walker to get those kind of middle-of-the-road, skeptical Republicans to come back out, because many of them are either going to vote for Senator Warnock or just stay home on December 6th.
Myra, you know, when I was looking at the commercial that the Warnock campaign put out on Herschel, and I heard them kept saying embarrassing. And as one that you know has been involved in civil rights all my life, to think that we fought for representation in someone that's clearly not qualified, just put there because he's black. And he may be good in other things. I'm not taking that away from him. I mean, embarrassing. As someone looking at this, do you understand that some of the turnout we're seeing, and I'm hearing it from people that I know in Georgia that I work with, is that we cannot shame what we've achieved in terms of vote access. I mean, this is the state that Martin Luther King was born and buried in, by having representation that's clearly unqualified to serve in the Senate.
I mean, given what the Republican Party has come to stand for and stand against, which in part is simply black people at this point, and access to democracy and to citizenship, the idea that the Republican Party in 2022 would put forth a candidate who, among other things, is also a black man, to kind of usher in more voter repression and more of what the Republican Party stands for is cynical. The thing that makes it, though, really disturbing to me is just the overall message to voters, black and white, that one black man is just as good as another. One black man is the same as any black man. So it doesn't matter if you're Barack Obama, it doesn't matter if you're Raphael Warnock, it doesn't matter if you're Herschel Walker, they're all the same. You're all the same. And voters should see you that way. And it's also just an insult to black Americans, but to all voters.
That's the sort of racist aspect of this. It's truly insulting. But Greg, I just wonder, I mean, with this candidate who has now been on the national stage, he's gotten a lot of airtime. Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham sit on either side of him to help him get through interviews. It's very clear to, you know, a practical-minded person that this is a mentally and intellectually impaired person, to say the least. There have been multiple women who have come out and said that he's paid for abortions. He's lied about it. His children, his adult children, have come out vehemently against him, calling him a repetitive liar and womanizer. I just wonder, what does the common sense Republican in Georgia say about this candidate or feel about this candidate? And what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, there's generally three different blocks of Republican voters. One are a group that doesn't believe any of those accusations, that believes it's all fake news. And that's a significant portion of the Republican Party here. There's another that believes it but doesn't care because they'll never vote for a Democrat, or they'll always want to vote for whoever the Republican nominee is. But then there's that third crucial block of voters that played the decisive role in the midterm. 200,000 voters backed Governor Brian Kemp, a Republican, but did not support Herschel Walker. And that was the difference between an outright Republican win and the runoff we're in. And that's why Senator Warnock is making sustained appeal to them right now.
So, Greg, it's so fascinating, this election. You know, beforehand I'd said, well, you know, the Republicans in Georgia seem more reasonable. They still seem like Main Street Republicans compared to those crazy Republicans in Arizona. Then those crazy Republicans in Arizona ended up not being so crazy. They're like, wait a second, we will vote for Republicans, and they did. I mean, they voted for Republicans up and down the ticket. They sent them to Congress. They just didn't vote for the crazy ones, which I find fascinating, that Arizona and Georgia are still so much alike, both in 20 and in 22. What can you tell me? Is there sort of a battle for the future of the Republican Party in Georgia? And I would just say, as a former Republican, are the Main Street Republicans, my sort of old faction, are they getting the upper hand right now?
I would say there's been a civil war in the Republican Party in Georgia for years, but I'd say right now the mainstream Republicans in Georgia are ascendant because Brad Raffensperger won, Brian Kemp won. You know, all these pro-Trump challengers, with the exception of Herschel Walker, really lost their statewide primary challenges or their statewide primaries. And so it's Herschel Walker who stands alone. But, you know, in that sense, too, even without Donald Trump's endorsement, he could have very well have emerged as the Republican nominee because of his name recognition, because of his ties to University of Georgia football, because of all those sort of intangible qualities that he has. But of course, as you heard him on the campaign trail, those stories that you just saw in that TV ad, we've heard them on the campaign trail for weeks. These were not, for the most part, one-offs. He's talked about that cow story over and over again. And so a lot of times when voters hear them in person, when voters hear them in person, they kind of, did he really say that? Is he really talking about that? And so that's the real challenge that Republicans have right now.
Wow.
Does he think does he know what's he saying with the cow story?
We need to let Greg go.
A political reporter for the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. Thank you very much.
So